All right, fellow mech warriors, mech commanders, we're going to be talking about variants in Battletech and this idea of understanding how they rank in the game and how they play in the game, approaching that narrative, because new players, I can understand it can be a little bit confusing. You have a mech, you have the Marauder, it's got the PPCs, it's got the autocannon, you've got the lasers, you've got that classic model. That model is wysiwyg to the prime variant. And for a lot of us and a lot of war games, it truly is wysiwyg. What you see is what you get. The biggest game is Warhammer 40,000. You have to have all the right war gear on there. But also historical miniature war games. Playing Chain of Command World War II, I mean, I could proxy a Panzer III for a Tiger. Changes things tactically because that Tiger 3 is really tiny, relatively speaking, and that could change the profile on whether you see it or not, or if it's hull down. But even if we proxy that visually on the battlefield, it's important to know what a model represents so you can get that idea. So certainly this is nothing new to wargaming, but Battletech is unique in that if you play a Marauder, you can play the stock, but if you play any of the variants, no one's going to stop you from modeling that up. But you can just swap in that variant and say this is the variant. And, of course, let your opponent know ahead of time. There's also the idea of custom mechs. So I want to dispel some of that confusion for the new players. When you look at the tech manuals, you have to understand that literally Battletech is a business. This idea of the Star League maintaining the peace and prosperity in the galaxy, enforcing things, that was usually through conventional military. And then battle mechs come on the scene with the Mackie. And historically, the Mackie just transforms everything. So now you have all these manufacturers, classics like General Motors, literally selling battle mechs to the Star League because they have like unlimited currency. And some of these mechs were very efficient. Some of these mechs, like the Vulcan, were made for a very, very specific purpose, like to just fight infantry and tanks. So when you look at the Vulcan, and I'm not beating on the Vulcan, I love playing the Vulcan, but when you look at it from the meta of approaching other war games, you might look and say, the Vulcan is a mech. It's not very good. It's never going to fight other mechs. It's barely going to scratch the paint. But against infantry and vehicles of how resilient a mech is and the mobility, that's where it shines. So you have certain mechs that were designed for that situation. And then as you go through the tech manuals, this is where things get interesting because everyone's out there trying to make a buck. You have mechs that just, who cares if they even worked? They're not even really a good design, but a mech is a mech. And if I can sell it cheap and I can sell you spare parts, it's like the Ed 209 of mechs, that's where we're going to market it. And with the fall of the Star League, as we move through the timeline into the Inner Sphere Succession Wars and Succession era, what you see there is if you own any type of mech, you're like a knight of the realm. So if I'm rocking a Vulcan or I'm rocking, an example would be a Charger, right? Usually an assault mech is something that has lots and lots of guns, lots and lots of armor. The thought on the Charger was, let's make a recon mech on an assault chassis and let's jack up the engine. Let's make it really fast, really armored, give it a bunch of little pop light lasers, and we'll sell it. Because if a recon mech works good, like the various bug mechs, the Wasp, the Stinger, the Cicada, the Locust. If that sells really well, then let's have an assault mech sell even more because we can charge more C-bills for it. But if you have a Charger in this current timeline, that's something special. So then what you see, if you look through the tech manuals, you have the primary, that factory configuration. But then you'll have variants. And the variants are either, as the mech evolved, they realized, hey, we started out with a large laser, but later on we replaced it with an autocannon. Or as the wars went on, we realized this mech had a deficiency here, so if we replaced it with these weapons, it worked better. You also see examples of downgrades. An example of that, I love the Archer. Dual LRM-20s. That's got some bite. That's worth the price of admission. But what you see on some of the older Archers, especially if they're on the edge of the Inner Sphere, garrison duty, those LRM launchers have been downgraded to rocket launchers. So you fire more rockets, but shorter range and different structure. So you might see this from time to time where there's variants that switch things or change things. Another example, the Charger. As the wars went on, the great houses were looking and saying, well, I have a ton of these Chargers. I don't need a recon mech. I've got locusts for that. Let's take the Charger because, look, it's an assault class mech. Let's give it an AC-20. Let's bring it up to speed. Let's transform it to a true assault mech and bring that to the table. So you'll see variants where they build and change. And then finally, of course, you're being free in the narrative itself to create your own mech. So you could take a mech and change it and swap it. An example that I was running a while ago in kind of a hybrid game master RPG type game, we had some pirates attacking various bases along the inner sphere, and the players were going in as a merc group. The pirates, of course, had mechs, and one of them had a marauder, but it was downgraded because this is a pirate force and C-bills are short, repairs are short. The mech had large lasers in place of PPCs, and it had changed some other configurations. So you had some of the more expensive tech, like PPCs, downgraded to lasers, or some of the rockets, long-range missiles replaced with rockets, or some of the lasers replaced with simplified autocannons. So you can work it from that perspective. Now, what do you play? What's best? That's going to come based on perspective and play style. For the most part, I play stock mechs, but there are a few that when I reach for them, I pull them out, I play the variant, and some of my mechs I have modeled up to be that particular variant because that's the primary that I play. Perfect example is the Locust. You play the variant with the medium laser and the 2 SRM 2-packs. That's got a bite. I throw down 7 to 10 Locusts. We have a bug stomping party. That's got a lot of bite. So whenever I play a Locust, that's the variant that I play. So naturally, that's the model that I have. But I could easily proxy it as a stock or the long-range missile variant or other aspects. So understanding variants, how they work, how to incorporate them, how to play them, how to begin to understand them as a new player to Battletech, very, very important and very different than many, many other war games out there that have a set fixed appearance or set fixed war gear that you have to make. What you see is what you get. That is not so in Battletech.